Hello, the historian Edward Gibbon wrote, "Every age, however destitute of science or virtue, sufficiently abounds with acts of blood and military renown. War, it seems, is one of mankind's most constant companions, one that has blighted the lives and troubled the minds of men and women from antiquity onwards. Plato envisioned a society without war, but found it had no arts, no culture, and no political system. War was often thought as desirable. It's peace which is now desirable. But how has war been understood through the ages? Who has it served and how has it been justified? Is war inherent to human beings, or could society be organised to the exclusion of all conflict?" With me to discuss the thought and history of war are Sir Michael Howard, Emeritus Professor of Modern History at the University of Oxford, Angie Hobbs, Lecturer in Philosophy at the University of Warwick, and Jeremy Black, Professor of History at the University of Exeter. Angie Hobbs, war featured greatly in Greek life. I think, in a sense, the foundation of our literature is the great war book, Iliad. Can you just say what Homer said in around 800 BC about war in that book?
Yes. Right from the very beginning, we're presented with a very complex picture of war. On the one hand, war seems to be accepted not simply as an inevitable facet of human experience, but also as the ideal training ground, display case and test for heroic courage. The supreme Greek warrior Achilles makes it explicit that his brand of heroism requires a battlefield. And battlefields, of course, are also where the hero wins the glory that is to be his compensation for risking his life or even sacrificing his life. The danger of this approach, of course, is that it could lead some people, not Homer, I think, but some of his readers, to approve of war or even actively to promote it. And the test case here might be the warrior leader Alexander the Great, who absolutely hero-worshipped Achilles and devoted his brief life to seek out war and conquest in an explicit attempt to emulate and even to supersede his hero. On the other hand, Homer is absolutely unflinching in his depiction of the suffering, pity and waste of war, as exemplified in his extraordinarily moving scene between Achilles and the Trojan king Priam. Priam comes to Achilles' tent as a supplicant to request the return of the body of Priam's son Hector, whom Achilles has slain and whose corpse he has defiled. And Achilles is so moved by Priam's courage and grief that he is briefly moved to reflect on what he is doing in Troy and what he is doing causing sorrow to the Trojan people, as he puts it. So right from the beginning you get this complexity.
And we have the dark side because we have Achilles' bloodlust. What's the Greek word for it?
That's right, karme, yes.
Karme, and bloodlust, yes. and the slaughtering of these boys to sacrifice with his friend Patroclus, who's been killed, and Homer seems to disapprove of that, even though, as it were, he's a Homer hero.
Oh, yes, yes. I mean, some of the acts committed by Homeric heroes, particularly by Achilles, are clearly castigated by other characters and gods in the Iliad itself. It's not an uncomplicated picture by any means.
Have you any means of judging how far this was a reflection of the actual experience of Greeks at the time? Not so much in the battles, we need to go into the details of that, but the idea that these were the great virtues, the heroic virtues, the virtues of courage, and these could be tested, these were the greatest things to do, and these could only be tested on battlefields.
Yes, well, if you take Euripides, for instance, Euripides tends to look at the innocent victims of war, as depicted, for instance, in his play The Trojan Women, where he looks at the conquered and soon-to-be enslaved Trojan women, and he makes it clear that these victims, or at least it's a suggestion that these victims don't just represent all innocent victims of war, but are specifically representative of the inhabitants of the island of Melos, whom the Athenians had treated with the utmost savagery and cruelty very recently. So there you get a direct example of how the interaction between Greek literature and Greek experience.
Very briefly, when Plato tried to think about a world without war through Socrates, he found it was a world without anything else as well, didn't he?